Now, it's not often that a summit between world leaders is so chummy that you're reduced to shouting at the TV screen, "Hey, you two, go get a room." But that was the entirely understandable reaction to this week's love-in between Presidents Trump and Macron, as they held hands, hugged, looked into each other's eyes and whispered sweet nothings. I'm told that at one stage their wives feared their husbands might actually elope together. I suspect that was just wishful thinking on Melania's part. They are indeed the odd couple, this former reality TV star, brash property developer, elected on a hardline nationalist and protectionist platform, and the cerebral philosophy graduate and banker who epitomizes liberal values and modern globalism. The French president has done most of the wooing in this attraction of the opposites, leaving Theresa May and Angela Merkel in his wake. But it is not without its risks. The French president can count on the US to brush away dandruff on his lapel, but is by no means sure Mr. Trump loves him enough to side with him on somewhat more important matters, such as the Iranian nuclear weapons deal, free trade, or America rejoining the Paris Climate Accords. Bénédicte Paviot is a UK correspondent for France 24. That's the country's rolling news station. This is her take of the week.
When it comes to diplomacy, our brilliant President Macron is no daft punk. First called the French Obama and now the Trump whisperer, he has played a blinder in his marche onto the world stage.
Bénédicte, what's the latest?
From the start, Emmanuel Macron understood that it was essential, crucial even, to engage with the US, whoever their president. Last summer, at the height of Donald Trump's unpopularity in Europe, Macron invited him to a military display on Bastille Day, on the Champs-Élysées, full of pomp and pop. Oui, oui. Oui, oui, entendu. Juste dans un instant. C'est bon. Contrast that with the UK's position of the details of a London visit for President Trump, not yet finalised. Vive la différence?
Bénédicte, thank you very much for that update.
Dandruff checks aside, the French president is using his charm and authority as French president to engage with the US on globally important issues. He already appears to have shifted his counterpart's stance on the immediate withdrawal of US troops from Syria. And Macron has pledged to work with Trump on Iran. Is it just possible that with a warm embrace, Macron may get Trump to shift his stance on climate change too? Is it also just possible that despite some coarse pronouncements, the US president has a better grasp of geopolitics than first thought? Bringing North and South Korea to the negotiating table would be no small achievement. Bromance there may be, but let's not forget the strategic reason for which the US is embracing France. With the UK marred in one Brexit row after another, France offers the US the key to the EU. And with Angela Merkel no longer the undisputed Queen of Europe, President Macron has brilliantly positioned himself to take advantage of this. Our leader's charm and politics has captured the imagination in France, and now it seems in the US. Listen, Ed, don't you wish the UK had an Emmanuel Macron?
And Bénédicte Paviot joins us now. Welcome to the programme. Ed, why has Mr. Macron been able to ignore all his critics of Trump and do what we've just seen, whereas Mrs. May has seemed cowed by all the critics of Trump in this country and hasn't got so close to him?
Well, I think Macron has played blind. I mean, he's a very, very skillful politician, and it is fascinating because the level of support for Trump in the UK and in France is at, as I understand it, at very similar levels, and actually, as I understand it, there's more hostility in France generally to America, or more sort of wariness of America than there is in the UK anyway. So He's ignored all that. He's gone out to...
He's upstaged us.
He's upstaged us, and
why have we let this
you
happen?
watch it happen. It's like it's choreographed. I mean, you know exactly what he's up to. It's amazing to see the.
But why have we let this happen?
Well, it's because he's in a much. Despite some of the problems he's got in the polls, he has a big majority behind him. That's not the case with Theresa May. But I think there's a much more fundamental issue. He has got an argument, and he's going to go and make it. And Theresa May doesn't have a big global argument about how you deal with long-term challenges. I mean, he made such a great speech to both houses saying that shutting the door on the world won't stop the evolution of the world.
But what did he say that Mrs. May wouldn't have agreed with?
I don't think she would have made that case, that the way you deal with globalisation, immigration, climate change, inequalities, is by providing real answers to people's solutions, not pandering to national.
But she supports the
nationalistic.
Paris Accords on climate change, like Mr. Macron. She supports free trade, like Mr.
She does, but
Macron.
she's
So
in-
where are
she
the
is-
policies actually different?
she
The
is
style
in-
is different.
She is
but
in.
where's the policy
I
difference?
think she is in hock to the right wing of her party, who are much more nationalistic, isolationist, and that's why she can't take it on. If you haven't got the argument,
No, I
you're
don't,
not
I don't
going to
think.
be
I
able
mean,
to
I
go
think.
and
I
make
think.
it.
Look, Macron is a great politician. He's got a strategy, and his strategy it's a wonder
Has
to
an argument.
behold. He's gone for it. He's not been held back by French public opinion, as far as I understand it. He's decided he wants to be close to the American president, whoever he is. He's seen his opportunity, and I think. But funny enough, by being bold, it's come back to benefit him, because I suspect in France people are saying, slightly through gritted teeth, we don't like Trump, but we love the fact that our president is the first guy over there for a state visit.
Benedict, it is high risk, though. What does he get out of it, Mr. Macron?
It's not really high risk. Any French president actually needs to engage with an American president. I think from the word go, when President Macron invited Donald Trump to go to the Bastille military parade last 14th of July, that was very important because he didn't worry about the unpopularity of President Trump. One thing you can't accuse President Macron is watching the polls and doing what the polls and letting...
No, I understand, but my question was, what is he getting out of it?
Engaging with a president that matters in the world, engaging with a president that is very important to do so, because as he very wisely and truly pointed out in his speech to Congress, there are very many challenges that face this world that need to be dealt with together, whether it is terrorism, whether it is Sahel.
Right, but let's come back to what he
whether it is
gets. Let's
security.
look at that. What does he get out of it? I can tell you without doubt, there is no chance that Mr. Trump will sign back on to the Paris Accords on climate change. So he doesn't get that for a start.
Well, I don't think that that's... that's not such a shocker.
No.
He
So,
said,
you know,
but Andrew,
I
he said
don't
in
think
his-
that's a big shocker,
he
what you
said
just
in
said.
his-
Okay, well, let me give you another one that might be more of a shocker.
Iran
There
is important.
It is highly unlikely.
And Syria is important.
It's highly unlikely that Mr. Trump will remain in the Iranian deal. And he'll announce that on May the 12th. What happens to Mr. Macron then?
It's not
What does he get out of it?
It's not quite that simple. It is clear that the two men... Look, the word engage is capital here, Andrew. This French president knows that not to engage with the US president would be madness in the extreme.
Sure, but
not
he's
to
doing
engage
it in a
with
way
this
different
particular
from any
president.
previous French president.
Yes,
No, but,
because he is
I mean-
a particular type of person. And I think French people, actually, although there are strikes, and Liz was alluding to them, and actually in the polls he's not doing badly. Although there are those strikes, when you speak to people in France, the majority of French people respect the fact that the president that they have elected a year ago and who, against
right.
all expectations, is actually following through on things that he said he would do.
Right, but Liz,
Not pulling
here-
out US troops of Syria is very important.
Here's the-
Engaging this president
Here's the
and
issue, though.
helping him to understand the bigger
Right.
world challenges.
But if there's no return to the Paris Accords, if America does pull out of the Iranian deal, if Mr. Trump continues down the protectionist road, What has Mr. Macron got for all this hand-holding and hugging?
He explicitly said in his speech that, you know, the current president isn't always going to be there. He takes the long view. He was trying to make a pitch to the American people for if Trump is not there. That was one of the things. Secondly, he has explicitly stated he doesn't think he can change Trump's views. He hopes to moderate them. And thirdly, he wants to show he's got cojones.
Yeah.
And he goes out to make the argument. So that's what he gets out of it, even if, and I think you're right, Andrew, I mean, the idea that Trump is going to do anything other than put America first is for the birds. But he's trying, and he's speaking for the long term.
So-
That's real
Andrew,
leadership.
sorry, I didn't express it properly, so let me try and do it in 2 sentences. There is a new deal that the two men are discussing. I believe that in the wings, the UK is involved.
You mean with Iran?
In Iran.
With Iran, I'm referring to your question. Absolutely. And it's too soon for any details to come out. Yes, there's that May the 12th deadline looming, but clearly it's not all black and white that he's pulling out of this accord. And Mr. Macron is trying to help him to evolve into that position.
So, if that's the case, if Liz and Benedict are right, what are the lessons for Britain from Mr. Macron and what's happened in Washington when Mr. Trump comes to the United Kingdom on
Well, I think
Friday the
lessons
13th
I
of
think,
July?
Politics goes in long cycles, and I think to a certain extent, in the 80s and 90s, perhaps Britain basked in the fact that perhaps it was giving lessons to the continent by seeing through very difficult reforms and, in my view, transforming the UK. And now perhaps President Macron is giving the lesson back that if you stand for something and you stick to your guns and
If
see
you
it
shine,
through,
you die.
you come out the other side with a lot of respect, even if you're doing something that people find
Yeah,
unpalatable.
but what are the
I would
lessons
very
for
quickly
Britain?
say, Andrew, that you are right to urge an element of caution, going back to the strikes as well, because Macron is playing a high-stakes game. You're right that if Trump just turns around and disses everything that Macron wanted, the French public opinion might say, well, what's the point of that? If the strikes carry on through the summer,
But I've moved on from all that. My question now,
the lesson
is the lesson
have
for Britain.
principles, believe in something and talk about them and stick to them.
And try and think about that difficult, very difficult though it is, beyond the individual president to the country and the values we share.
Yeah.
but isn't the danger is that his visit is simply going to be dominated by massive demonstrations?
Yes.
Yes.
So there'll be none of what we're talking about at all.
But I thought your point about the Paris Accord was well made, that perhaps if we had been bolder in saying we think this is wrong, President Trump, and rather than have it briefed out that there was a phone call and a telling off, but have speeches saying this is wrong and standing
You
up for
haven't
what
seen
we
the
believe
tweet
in.
of the Foreign Office within minutes. I was in the Foreign Office getting a deck suit, 10 Downing Street and Foreign Office briefing until 2 o'clock in between all the filming.
I'm sorry you had to do that.
No, loved it. Great team. Please ask me to do it again. But the point is that they would not confirm to us that 13th of July. Within minutes it's confirmed. And there's this great, go online, look at FCO, talking about the special relationship and the great...
Sure.
And it's going to be a real challenge, you're right, for
It
Mrs.
is going to
May,
be a challenge,
and a
isn't
real
it?
challenge, because there's going to be all the demonstrations. I think that we will see not very much London action. Whether he will have tea with the Queen...
He is
but
going
it's
to meet the
clearly there's going to be this comparison in Americans' minds and in British and in
right.
French and world minds.
I mean, the atmosphere will be entirely
Bonne
different
chance.
because of the
Good luck.
demonstrations. Who's the British Macron?
I don't think there is one.
You don't?
No.
Is there a British Macron?
Michael Gove.
Michael Gove.
Yeah.
I can't believe
Did you hit the Blue Nine
Who's that
Elevator?
laughing?
Is there a British Macron?
If there is one, we don't know about him or her yet. We have to hope that they're... I would say...
He
it
or
would
she
be-
is in Parliament
to
at the moment.
energise. Yeah, I mean, it is possible that somebody hasn't... you know, when I met him when he was finance minister, and I was very fortunate, there were only about sort of maybe 10 other people in the room, he has this quality, and everybody talks about it. When he looks at you, and it's not some fake, you know... He absolutely is giving you his undivided attention. He has this creative intelligence. You know,
Look,
you
I
see
mean, look-
the interviews he does. I mean, and what he packs into one day. And he actually, he's trying to engage and explain. He did that town hall meeting with young people yesterday. And the fact that he speaks English, let me
Yeah.
not be on your programme tonight and not say and underline in this country how fundamental it is to have a French president who speaks fluent English. As a half French, half English person, I am fed up with French people, really, and I will get a lot of flack for that, who think that the only way to pass on our beautiful French standards and cultures and love of many things
I just want to go
is
one
through
more
the French
question
language.
in because we have to go. Am I right in thinking he looks like he's going to win this battle with SNCF?
Yes,
Very
I think
proud.
you are right. The
Which
French
will be a
people-
watershed.
It
It will
will,
be,
and
yes.
he announced he's trying to keep promises that he made. He thinks this is fundamental that these reforms go ahead, and he's saying don't compare the strikes and the anarchy, in a sense, that happened 22 years ago to now. It's a
That was
different
under
France.
Mr. Xi, right?
France is back.
Okay.
Well done.
And so were you tonight, Bénédicte Paviot.
Look forward to
Thank
coming
you.
back.
Thank you.
You'll be on every week if France goes on like this.